Hey, it's your boy Matt here. This is an admin video for the Saturday the 3rd of May 2025. This is actually election day in Australia. I pre-polled, so I don't get to do that, but I do get to have what we call in Australia democracy sausage. This is where you go to the polling booth and you buy a sausage and bread, usually white bread and a very cheap sausage. You chuck a lot of tomato sauce on it. National meal for very important day. So today's admin, we're discussing Chris Cappy, who was the guy who was doing open source intelligence, and he ran a YouTube channel called Task and Purpose, and he did this for a long time. My understanding is that he started that project, or he was the primary driving force behind it, but over time he kind of got squeezed out, because what he did is that he's what is known as an open source communicator. He is someone that people who do spooky work like working with, because he bridges the divide between that really classified, put away stuff and the open source public relations things. And my understanding from following his situation is that there was a move to take away his project from him, because primarily his YouTube channel, Task and Purpose, was very much his thing. He was the primary personality behind it. If he wasn't the person who owned it or started it, to my understanding, he was at least the primary personality of the project. And him being squeezed out was political and probably an administrative decision. I don't know if it was by the bureaucracy that grew behind him, or if it was by the more spooky end trying to push him out. But this is an understood role in public relations, government, people relations, when there's spooky stuff involved. It's pretty standardized at this point. There's a lot of public figures who kind of take up this role because the intelligence community are coming to an understanding that they need to be able to get the public on side, and them being all cloaked and mysterious does not do that. It just means that when there is a leak which comes out, it makes everything from that leak seem very authentic, because it's the only information which is published, and they have no means of maintaining a good PR presence. And the intelligence organizations have a lot to answer for. We learned that from Edward Snowden, and his depiction of the culture of intelligence institutions is very accurate. I'm not saying that a lot of the work which is done by organizations such as NSA and ASD, in my opinion, is useful, and that mass surveillance potentially is justified, but that's neither here nor there. His description of the culture of these institutions in and of itself was valuable. And similar, I look at figures such as David McBride. He didn't blow the whistle specifically on murders by SAS men in Afghanistan. He wasn't about that. He was trying to express that there was a serious cultural problem in defense, where the entire institution had to built around trying to make ministers look good rather than fulfilling the institution's mission. And this meant, instead of dealing and prosecuting these war criminals, because Australia has a lot to answer for, instead of being able to prosecute them, governments will try and avoid accountability and to defend the reputation of ministers. So this has nothing like David McBride's work. David was not opposed to the operational effectiveness of the SAS or Special Forces. He at one time tried out for the British SAS, and he was very much a person who was he was authorizing killings and all kinds of things as a legal officer. He's not a coward, and he's not a pacifist. I'm not a pacifist either. His point was that the operational effectiveness of these institutions has diminished because of that of cultural problems, and that cultural problem is kept there by this secrecy because it's difficult to discuss, talk about, and confront. And I'm kind of worried about Chris Cappy because his and I'm worried that my project might suffer a similar fate. I am trying very hard to distance myself from involvement with intelligence, although because I have been around it, they may not let me leave. And the worst case scenario is that they try and steal my project. That is something they've tried very hard to do in the past, mainly the people at Rogue Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who had cyber warfare and cyber security backgrounds. Michael overestimated his involvement in the project, and instead of allowing me to run the project how I designed it, there's always this thing where people are trying to steal my work. And that's pretty devastating. Like, I worry that the poverty I live in is intentional. In fact, I know it has been intentional because they've been trying to get me to squirt into different either government jobs or just something else at times, because instead of seeing the project as something beneficial, they decided it was a threat. That was completely out of just shit-eating behavior. Lack of, these people are not good people. They're not. Like, if they can't control and dominate you, they want to destroy you, and it's not out of any necessarily operational need. It's just because they're terrible people. The way David McBride described his experience working with intelligence people and the bureaucracy in the military was that a lot of these people, they can't, they'll throw a tantrum if they get their meal allowance taken away. So they can't comprehend what he's done with how he's martyred himself, because these people do not have that moral character. I'm sure they'd like to pretend they do. I'm sure they often look for causes to put themselves behind because it makes themselves feel virtuous. I remember my previous divisional officer used to have this thing where he would just justify bullying to people, because in his mind that was a way of keeping out to ensure that we didn't get any odd behaviors such as transgender people or things like this. So he had a moral justification for it, and he ideologically put himself behind that. And that's what these people are like, and military and intelligence institutions provides an opportunity for many of these people to thrive. So in Chris Cappy's case, I think he lost his channel more just because the administration wanted to be able to operate it more directly. And that may be something they tried and do with Taco. I don't think they can do it because, similar to the royal family, I have imbued myself as a cultural figure, except they might try. They might try to replicate what I've done out of my playbook. There are all kinds of shitty things they can try and do. That's part 1 of my admin video today. I might do a part 2. I've got some ideas of how I want to operate Taco now and into the future, but the biggest thing I need access to a lawyer, and I need to be able to describe my case in a very straightforward way, which means I need to have due process. I need to be made aware in the particulars of what legal interventions have been taken against me, so I can begin unwinding this process of horrific oppression, and hopefully work towards some prosecutions for some of the perpetrators in this case.